Welcome to Back Talk, the premier podcast from Successful Black Parenting Magazine, featuring in-depth conversations and expert insights on crucial topics for Black families. We are ranked one of the top 4 Black family podcasts on FeedSpot. I'm your host, Janice Robinson Celeste. Did you know that on average, African American college graduates owe $25,000 more in student loan debt than their white counterparts? Have you ever wondered how this financial gap affects families and what you can do to help your child graduate college with little to no debt at all? Let's dive into this important topic and explore actionable solutions with someone who's mastered the art of funding higher education. Let's go.
This is Back Talk by Successful Black Parenting Magazine, the most listened to podcast for parents by parents.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to Back Talk by Successful Black Parenting Magazine, your go-to podcast talk show for parents. I want you all to stay with us now because this is going to be really important, especially you guys listening on Instagram. You're my favorite audience because you're always on it. And our audience that listens in on Facebook and YouTube, you always got the comments coming. So put your comments down there live and we will put them live on air or we'll talk about them. So I need you to do a little favor, as always. Go ahead and spread the word about our show. Share it with someone. Share it with someone who needs to hear about this. Someone who has a teen that's graduating, that needs to graduate debt-free. Okay? Tell them, shout it out. Our hashtag is BackTalk, and let me know when you post. On this episode of Back Talk, we have Jennifer Ledwith. Let me bring Jennifer to the stage. She is the founder of Scholar Ready, a program that helps students graduate college with little to no debt through academic preparation and financial planning, also scholarship guidance. Jennifer is also a certified financial planner. So welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Thank you, Janice. Thank you for welcoming me to your show.
All right. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and why you founded Scholar Ready?
All right. When I was a senior in high school, I looked around and I decided that I did not want to go to school with the same people anymore. I had gone to the same school, or I had gone to school with pretty much the same people for most of K through 12, and I wanted a change. And I knew that the only way for me to be able to realize that change was to apply for scholarships. My mother at the time was a single parent, and she made too much, too much for need to qualify for need-based aid, but not enough to write not just one check, but 2 checks for college because I have a twin sister. And of course, we were going to college at the same time. Therefore, from the time I was a junior in high school to the time I was a junior in college, I applied for over 30 scholarships, and I was able to go to college out of state with only $1,000 in student loans. And
Wow.
yeah, thank you. And that was because I had really good test scores. I'm a really good essay writer, and I am incredibly persistent.
And what
And
did you go to?
I graduated from the University of Oklahoma, and
Okay.
I have a bachelor's degree in finance and economics from the University of Oklahoma. I have a master's certificate in personal financial planning from Rice University. My parents did not pay for me to go to school. They have no clue, like how they don't even know how much it was, but through working part time and my scholarships, I was able to academic scholarships. I was able to pay for school. And by the way, that $1,000, that loan, I wish I could tell you that it was for something like academically enriching or something to help my career, but it wasn't. I just wanted to buy plane tickets to go see a boyfriend in Houston. So that's what I did. So I didn't really need the $1,000 loan. But that's what you do
That's
when you're 20 years old. Those are the kinds of decisions you make.
That's fantastic. So we're not talking about community college tuition. You're talking about
Mhm,
university tuition. You were able
mhm,
to manage that
mhm,
all through scholarships. Now,
mhm.
how do you do that? What strategies or habits helped you to achieve that? And how did they inspire the creation of your toolkit? Because you have a toolkit to help students.
Absolutely. So I would say that the way that so of course there is persistence, and many of my students are athletes. So let me back up and say this is what inspired me to create my toolkit, and then I'll talk about the inspiration or like how to go about doing it. I thought that my situation was normal. I did not realize that what I was doing wasn't normal. Like I wasn't like most people don't do what I did, right? And so most people don't do that. And I was inspired because I had a classmate who I thought was really, really smart, and she had really good community service activities. And she didn't apply for stuff because she was dismayed by she was intimidated by writing the essays. And I started my business to help students to be able to get scholarships like I did. And eventually it just evolved into preparing students for, of course, helping students to write essays for college, but it also evolved to helping students to write, to prepare for PSAT, SAT, and ACT, and also to help them with their reading and writing skills. And then ultimately, I became a financial planner as a part of that to help them as well.
Okay.
So when we talk about how did I do it, you have to be persistent and you have to really set goals and understand what you're trying to do. When I was a senior, I was like 9 toes into college and 1 toe still on campus of my high school. And when I say that, I mean that when I was a senior, I did not take as I took advanced classes all throughout school, K through 12. But when I was a senior, I still took advanced classes, but I didn't take as many as I did my junior year. I just had a lighter load because I needed time to be able to apply for scholarships. So I treated it like a part-time job. I had I had free periods as a senior, and during my free periods, I would go home and I would apply for scholarships. And back in the day, everything wasn't so virtual. So I was like, I wanted my applications to look good, so I was typewriter. I was using the typewriter to to typewrite my applications, and that's how I was but just like you have to be persistent in terms of having a consistent schedule to apply for scholarships. When I think about the toolkit, one of the first things that I ask people to do in the toolkit is to prioritize. You have to prioritize. You have to. When you're a senior, there are so many things that always seem more important than preparing for SAT, ACT, writing essays. There's so many things that just seem so much more important, but you have to prioritize. And what is it that you want to do? So when we prioritize, the number one thing when it comes to scholarships is looking at to the students' prospective colleges or universities. For most students, most of their financial assistance will come from their college in the form of scholarships or even from the federal and state governments in the form of grants. But we can talk when we think about let's talk about the merit and the academic piece, and let's focus on the scholarships. So then you have to prioritize and you have to look at what those scholarships are going to award. And on my website, I actually have like a list on the blog. I have a list of colleges along with their scholarship programs. I have a couple of lists on my blog, and you can look at the colleges to see what their scholarship awards are along with their requirements. So typically grade point average, class rank, SAT, ACT scores. Those are the kinds of things that I tell people to do first. Like in this kit, we have to prioritize. We have to look at how much, how much money is available, and then you have to work backward and position yourself in such a way where you can qualify for those scholarships. So that's the first thing in the toolkit. Um, as parents are helping their students to navigate this journey, parents should have an honest conversation about who is paying for what and when. A really honest conversation about that, because college is so expensive, and so often like I have students whose parents say, well, as long as you As long as you go, go to high school, you do what I asked you to do, you get your good grades, you stay out of trouble, you can go to any college you want to. And sometimes I feel like they make those promises based on when they went to college or maybe when their peers went to college.
Absolutely.
And I mean, it's a different time. I mean, my education cost $64,000. That was 20 years ago. Now that same education is double that. I mean, it could be, and I'm from Houston and I went to college out of state, and it was, it's like, I don't know, it's probably double that, right? At least double that right now. And it's not, and it's the same thing for in-state. For students who go to school in-state, the prices have skyrocketed since parents were their kids' ages. So
And
we have.
you're
Go
right.
ahead.
No, I want to ask you about that because
Mhm,
I know you mentioned that you had to do your applications on the typewriter
mhm.
and no shade or anything like that, but that was a long time ago because
It
I remember
was.
I had to learn typing in school, so I'm talking about myself too. But but the costs since then, like you said, have gone up so much.
Mhm.
Have the awards gone up as well?
So that's a really good question. And that's why I tell people when they look for scholarships to prioritize the colleges, because the colleges have the power to, they can say full ride or partial ride, or we'll pay for we'll just pay for your tuition. Who's setting the tuition prices? It's the colleges. The colleges can their scholarships can keep up with inflation, with tuition inflation all day long. The scholarships that are offered by smaller private organizations, and not to cast any shade on private organizations. My scholarship, I'm the scholarship chair of a community organization, and we offer scholarships to local students. And our scholarships do not keep up with like the amounts we award. Those dollar amounts do not keep up with the skyrocketing cost of inflation. I mean, they can. I mean, even if you have a scholarship that's, let's say if I received a scholarship, and I did, I received one scholarship that was $5,000 a year from my my dad's employer. And I mean, that's great. That's wonderful back then, but that was $5,000 a year when my tuition was, um, you know, uh, 60, maybe $7,000, $8,000 a year, and then I was paying for my room and board with my employment. But I mean, but I don't know, but that $5,000 is not going to stretch as far now, and those organizations aren't increasing their dollar amounts awarded based on like they're not based on like a cost of living adjustment. They're not doing that. So that's why I say it's very important when you look for scholarships, you need to start at the colleges and see what the colleges are offering. And when you go to these college events, the recruiters will say, hey, and some of them may say, hey, we're test optional, because since the pandemic, more and more colleges switched to offering test optional admissions. Now, we do have schools that are returning to require the exams, the SAT and ACT for admission. But what they tell you they'll tell you very loudly that, hey, we are test optional. They'll say that that's the loud part. But the quiet part is, if you want scholarships, you need to submit test scores. And so often people miss out on, higher scores open doors. And so many people miss out on those opportunities, and they'll say things like, oh yeah, we got in. And I'm just like, you're supposed to get in. Like, look at your grade point average, look at your class rank. You're supposed to get in. But do you know how many students you're competing with across the country and across the state who have
Right.
those same grades, and who have, who are in the top, so much percentage of their class? I mean, you have to do something different. And like those test scores, you need to the grades and the class rank are not enough, especially because the grades overwhelmingly are inflated, and
Okay.
they are not a reflection of, they don't necessarily match with the student's college readiness.
Uh, We just talked recently about inflated grades in private schools versus public schools and
Mhm,
all of that. But I want to go back to
mhm,
the honest talk with
mhm,
parents, since we're
mhm,
parenting magazine, especially because I
mhm,
remember, and a lot of my friends, as well as my parents, and they meant well. They really did.
mhm,
They would say, "Oh, you have to go to college when you graduate high school," you know. And I
mhm,
remember saying
mhm.
to my parents, "I want to take a year off." That's before, you know, it had an official name. You know, I think it's gap year we're calling it now.
Yeah,
I
here.
wanted to do this back in the day. I just wanted to go
Mhm,
travel and see
mhm,
the world
mhm.
before I got to go to college. They're like, "Oh no, because you won't go. If you take a year off, you won't ever go." And but no one offered any money to help me go,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And I remember struggling trying to buy books, you know? Had to get into debt at the time.
Mhm,
And a lot of debt just to pay for my college. And
mhm.
when I looked at my parents, they were like, but I have to go? With
Yeah,
what
like, yeah,
money?
yeah,
If I had the
yeah.
sense I have now, I would have said, with what money, mom, dad? You guys, this isn't free, you know? So can you talk a little bit more about that?
So, all right. So I have to say that people have to understand so I'm not a parent. And even if I was a parent, I wouldn't pass out parenting advice specifically for people because everyone is different. Everyone's household is different.
Yeah,
Um, I will say what worked for me because, and then of course, every child is different. So this is what worked for me. My mother still is very transparent about money. I grew up in a family of women who were single, divorced, widowed, and they were running households. And they always talked about money. And they talked about like how, and not necessarily when I talk about money, I don't mean like worshiping money or anything like that. I mean, how much does this cost? How much did it cost you to get the roof replaced? How much does that plumber charge? How much, how much does it charge to get, how much does it cost to get this done? And I remember just so that's the kind of environment I grew up in. And I remember one time I was a teenager and I asked my mother to buy me something. And she was like, and then she told me, she said, Jennifer, she said, the mortgage costs this, the light bill is this, the water bill, the car note, the insurance. And she broke down all of, and she said, oh, and I bring this amount of money home every month. And, so if she's telling me this, and by the way, my mother is a math teacher and I'm really good at math. So, we're speaking our common language. And I'm sitting here and I'm just listening to her and I'm like, okay, the answer is no. And so she just kind of and then another thing that happened to me is and so I learned very early that if I wanted something, I was just going to figure out how to make it happen. And I have an older brother, and I watched my older brother go to college. And our financial circumstances were different back then. My brother's 11 years older than me. And his college, my parents paid for him to go to college. And but I did see that he was more restricted in terms of what he could, the college he wanted, the college he could attend, the major he pursued. And so I started understanding that, and I'm just not that kid. Like, I wasn't that kid. I was like, I want to do what I want to do. And so the message for me very early on was if I want to do what I want to do, I have to find the money for it. And that's just how I am.
absolutely.
I'm not I know most kids are not like that. And I always have to be very careful when I teach my students because I know that they're not built. Most of them are not built like I
Right, right.
am.
And
Because
they
of
have
because
more resources
yeah, yeah,
today than we did,
absolutely.
but they're
Yeah.
not built to look for it. So I
No.
wish I had known you and had with your toolkit back then because I know so many kids in the same boat. But let me ask you, why do African American college graduates face such a significant disparity in student loan debt compared to their white peers? What's that
Okay.
about?
Okay. So we have the disparity. So many of us, so we can look at it this way. Many of us do attend, whether we attend predominantly white institutions or PWIs, or whether we attend historically black colleges and universities or HBCUs, we're gonna have a deficit because simply because historically black people lack generational wealth. Because if you can have, so when you go to college, people say, oh, you've got to save for college. And, we tell parents, oh, you got to save for college as soon as your kid is born. But a lot of times, like Black people who have the idea to send their kids to college, quite often they might be the ones in their family who made it. And so a lot of times when we're the ones who make it, we are helping everybody else who hasn't made it. So whenever, generally speaking, when I have sat with African Americans in a financial planning setting, one of my questions is, who are you helping outside your household? And it's always more so than any other group of people I've counseled, we are sending money to help other people. And maybe it's mama, mother-in-law, a niece, somebody, a brother, a sister, somebody we're helping. So we don't have the resources. Our resources are limited in terms of what we can save for college. And then often maybe, we have grandparents who, grandparents are paying or helping the kids go through college. But some grandparents are not in a position to help. Another thing is that the our so much of our wealth comes from home ownership, and the values of our homes, and a lot, and often, and we've seen this in the New York Times. There was a lawsuit over this, where this family's home appraised for less because they're African American, and they know it was because they were African American because the appraiser came one day and saw all their Black stuff out, and they got one lower appraisal, and then an appraiser came the next day and they had white stuff out, and maybe a white person met them at the door, and the appraisal increased. So for most people in this country, a great deal of their wealth is derived from home ownership. And if we are prevented from participating in home ownership, or if the values of our homes are lower than other folks' houses, then we're not going to have as much to be able to contribute to college. Another thing that happens with African Americans is that the greatest producer of African American college graduates are historically Black colleges and universities, and we know how to make a way out of no way. And but sometimes that gets taken too far. Historically Black colleges and universities are underfunded. Universities that are public land grant colleges. So when I say land grant, there are these colleges that were created as a part of land grants back like in maybe the 1800s or something. So for example, I'm in Houston, so I'm in Texas. Texas A&M University is a land grant college. It was created as a result of a land grant. Because Texas A&M did not want to admit African Americans to the school, the federal government said, hey, you have to create a land grant college for African Americans. That's why we have Prairie View A&M University. So Prairie View A&M is a land grant college. That Prairie View is underfunded. There is the Department of Education, Miguel Cardona, secretary in President Biden's administration, wrote a letter with a list of all of these land grant colleges that have been underfunded for decades, to the tune of, I think it's like maybe, I know it's at least millions. It could be like billions of dollars. I'm not certain. I know it's at least millions of dollars. They're underfunded. So that's challenging because it's harder for the historically Black colleges and universities to award significant scholarship funds because of the underfunding. So much, I wouldn't let that deter someone from applying or attending a HBCU. But those are some of the things. So typically our largest source of Black graduates, HBCUs, are underfunded. And then number two, we have the wealth gap, the racial wealth gap in America, and it's pernicious.
Absolutely. Now, we're right at the season where a lot of students will start to look for scholarships. I mean, so you can do it all year long, but this seems to be like from now to spring, especially. But at what age or stage should parents begin planning for their child's college education? I know we talked about from birth, but that doesn't happen a lot in our community. And what are the first steps they should take? So, what age and when and what are the
So
first
all right. So for me, the first step is so you think about, so for people who are seniors now, for people who are seniors now, we need to have a real conversation about who is paying for what and when. And they should be applying to they should be still applying. There may be some scholarship opportunities available from colleges right now. A lot of those have just passed. So what they are going to have to do is they're going to have to start figuring out a plan for how, the financial aid awards are coming in. And they're going to have to start thinking about how to apply to these private scholarships and just like being persistent in applying for them. If they face a shortfall for that first year of college, they need to look at, what loans look like. Like, okay, well, how much in loans am I going to have to take out? And then they need to start looking toward their upperclassmen years and figuring out like different scholarships, different internships, different opportunities that they can pursue in order to get to college. But for kids who are younger, like my juniors, I have an 8-week program to prepare students for PSAT, SAT, and ACT. It is preparing for those exams is transformative. One of my students, I prepared him for the ACT last year, and his college gave him like, what was it, like maybe $40,000 more over the course of 4 years because
wow.
his ACT score increased. So the highest one can score on the ACT is a 36. His score moved from a 24 to a 27. And and we worked for, probably about that time, maybe, 8 weeks or something. And we worked and worked and worked preparing for that exam. His score increased. And just that amount of time that he committed to that, his score went up. He was able to get like, what was it? 40, yeah, about 40,000 additional dollars. And he was a senior at the time. So seniors still can do that. It's transformative. We can do it. Sometimes we may feel daunted by tests, we may feel daunted by essays, but we have to sit down and focus on what the important thing is. Another thing is so that's for my juniors. And because I know people kind of, ideally people would start like when they're in kindergarten and things like that, but it just, life happens and it doesn't happen like that. For my students who are younger than my juniors, they have to work on the reading. Like you have to, parents have to be on it with the reading. If you can read, you can do anything. And these tests are based on reading. Like SAT, ACT, and PSAT are based on they're based on reading, and they can become better readers. The main thing. So I'm not a fan of test prep in like 8th grade for SAT. I'm just not. I think one of the things that you can do for test prep is encourage your child to read and write. And when I say read and write, I don't mean like put them in advanced classes in school and then just leave it to the school to do it. Because I have parents call me all the time. And I'm getting to that point now where in a few months I'm going to get parent calls from parents of rising seniors telling me, oh, Johnny has let's say SAT, the highest on the SAT is a 1600. Johnny has a 950 on the SAT. A 950 will not get you any money. It's not going to get you any serious money. But
Mhm.
Johnny has a 950 on the SAT, and he's just not good at taking tests. Like he has but I don't get it because he has A's and B's in all his AP classes. And this is where we have to be honest with ourselves. And yesterday the NAEP scores came out and revealed the reading deficits of our students. And those deficits are not new. They've just grown just a little bit. But people, it's very hard to have a conversation with a parent about their child not comprehending what they are reading. But but those AP scores, those for many students, and you spoke about grade inflation. For many
Mhm.
students, the kids are just being passed along. They're
Absolutely.
they're being passed along. It's an
Right.
open secret that the children cannot comprehend what they're reading. They can comprehend. You just have to spend some time helping them with it. But they have to, but we have to work on our reading. And you can't just leave it to the schools. As a parent, you have to look at, maybe you need some other indicators. Look at those PSAT scores. They are, for people who go to my website and go to the contact us page and give me their information, I'll send them some information to help them to understand if their child is on track to be in a position to qualify for these merit-based scholarships. But you have to be able, I mean, if you're a parent, you went to school, and if you ask yourself this, does my child have homework? Not really. They do it at school. Okay, that's not homework. Does my child read? No, not really. She doesn't like to read. Okay, so and a lot of times the kids haven't they're people say they have test anxiety, and that's legitimate, right? But we can combat test anxiety through practice, through preparation. A lot of times these kids, to prepare for a test, they read the PowerPoints from class, they read the notes. They're not reading a textbook, whether it's online or physical. They're not reading it, so they're not getting the information is not sticking.
Mhm.
And that's the barrier. It's not that they're like bad test takers, or they can't do it, or the tests are racially biased. And one more person tells me that. The tests are racially biased, but I have two students who scored perfect math scores on the SAT, and they are African American girls. So we can do it. We just have to, but with those younger ages, you have to stay on it with the reading. If you can read, you don't have to come to me. You'll never have to come see
Right,
me if you can
right,
read. With
right. Well,
Yeah.
how can parents and students identify scholarships they're eligible for? And what are some of the common mistakes that they make and they can avoid during the application process?
Okay, so to apply for scholarships, to first of all, again, start with the colleges and universities to identify scholarships. Identify the colleges and universities. Another thing that you can do is go to think about. I think of this as in my circle scholarships, and pull out your bank statement and look at where your money is going and where your money is coming from. So in other words, your employers, your credit unions, your banks, your insurance companies, maybe your if you belong to a union, if a parent belongs to a union or professional organization, those entities offer scholarships. And that's where students need to look after looking to the college or university for scholarships. Another great source of scholarships is a student's um, guidance, high school guidance counseling office. The professional counselors are great. I know, at least in my community, in assembling a scholarship bulletin that is online and easy to access, and with plenty of details about how to apply for the scholarships, along with the deadlines and the requirements for those scholarships. And parents, hey, parents and students, you're not just limited to the scholarships that are promoted on your schools or your school district's website. Hey, look at the scholarship bulletins posted on other high schools in your school district. Go look at the neighboring school districts. So I'll give you an example. I'm in Houston, and I have a number of students who I'm in Houston, but I work with students all over the country. But I'm going to use this as an example of Houston. So Houston has many suburbs. And let's say that I'm working with a student in a suburb called Pearland, and that student attends school in Pearland ISD. So if I'm a student in Pearland ISD, I'm going to look at the scholarships that the guidance counselor posts. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the scholarships in the other high schools in the district. And then I'm going to look at the scholarships of the surrounding area. For example, I'm going to look at the scholarships that are posted in Alvin ISD, Fort Bend ISD, Clear Creek ISD, Pasadena ISD, Stafford. I'm gonna Houston ISD. I'm Galena Park ISD. I'm gonna broaden my horizons, because often there'll be scholarships that you don't see on your local bulletin that may be on others for which you might qualify. So look at those awards, and then really take some time to you have to be consistent with it. I know this is senior year, and it's hard to believe that, I mean, I know it's the last everything. I get that. It's the last choir performance. It's the last golf tournament. It's the last spirit week. It's the last all of these things. And yes, it is the last all of these things, but you have to make some time to do it. So I know this may not be popular because there's such an arms race for class rank, but maybe students need to take a free period. Maybe instead of taking that additional advanced placement, whatever, or dual credit, whatever, or, you know, just an extra course, maybe you should just not take that class at all. And and I mean, don't skip classes, but when you're planning for your senior year, give yourself some time uh to write the essays, to apply for the scholarships. And another thing is, but students who are currently seniors, you have some time. Carve out some time. One time I had a student who wasn't doing her assignment, and I told her dad, and she said that she was like, I can't. Her excuse was, I need to get some sleep, and her father told her, don't sleep. So you find some time to get it done. Yeah.
Okay. What are some of the misconceptions about financial aid? If you could quickly tell us how families can maximize their chances of receiving grants or scholarships.
So a
That'd be
misconception,
helpful.
thank you, Janice. One of the big misconceptions of financial aid is that if a student and a parent submits their application to FAFSA, so if they submit the financial aid form, so the FAFSA, the CSS profile, one of those or both of those, a parent thinks that he or she will automatically be on the hook for student loans. That's not the case. There's a whole process where you submit the paperwork, your college reviews your paperwork, reviews your financial information, delivers a financial aid award letter to you, and you can accept or decline or reduce those awards. So you still have a choice. So you don't so just apply. Applying does not mean acceptance. Okay, so that's one myth. Another myth is we make too much money, so why should we even bother submitting the financial aid paperwork? But here's the thing, colleges often require the financial aid paperwork in order to offer merit-based scholarships, meaning scholarships that aren't really connected to a family's financial circumstances. And and those are where your big awards come from. Also, there are private scholarships that require financial aid paperwork. So I would say just apply for it. Another myth is I think another myth that kind of overwhelms people and prevents people from stopping. Another myth that overwhelms people and prevents them from pursuing scholarships is that there are all of these scholarships out there, and that are unclaimed every year, and I have to apply for them. So there's this idea that there's so many choices with respect to scholarships that I don't even know where to begin. That's a myth that kind of overwhelms, or that's something that overwhelms people. And what people
Mhm.
need to do is prioritize universities, college and university scholarships. Number two, scholarships in your circle, and then scholarships that are posted on the scholarship bulletins. And then you can do like the online searches as well. I'm leery of scholarships that are offered that you just see online because many of them
Mhm.
are sweepstakes, and they
Yeah.
just ask for students like name and um, they ask for students like name and email address and not much else. There's no essay or really no effort required.
Right.
And I'm leery of those. I think those organizations are more interested in selling students
Mhm.
information or their data as opposed to helping them to pay for college.
Absolutely. Now, real quickly, what are your thoughts on work study programs or students working part-time to help offset some of these costs?
Okay, so again, like parents have to know their students, and you have to know your child. But I mean, I had a work study job in college. I worked maybe 20 hours a week in college, and it was a work study. I worked in the cafeteria, and I've done everything in the cafeteria. Janice, they even had me making omelets. I do not like eggs. I do not eat. I do not eat eggs. I do not like omelets. And
Those
they had me
forbidden
making
omelets.
omelets. Yeah. So God bless God bless the people who ate my omelets. But it was a job that helped me to pay for my room and board, and it was wonderful. I met one of my best friends there, cafeteria, when I was in college, and and then another thing about work study is good because they're flexible with your schedule. Like they'll, when finals week comes around and students need more time or they need a different shift, that work study employer is going to work with the student. As opposed to maybe an employer that's not affiliated with the campus or not affiliated with the work study program, they're not as vested in students performing well. So I think work study, I think, 20 hours a week, some parents are like, I don't want my student to work. I want them to just focus on school. And it's like, there's not that much studying in the world. I mean, you do have some students who have like maybe learning disabilities where it takes them more time. But for most kids do not need that. I mean, of course, if you have football players, they're not going to have time. Like kids who are really involved in their sports, they're not going to have time for a job, generally speaking. But there's not. When I was in college, I noticed that students who worked consistently graduated in a reasonable amount of time. My friends who did not work consistently, they were there for a really long time. And I mean, I would too. If I didn't have to work those kinds of jobs, I'd still be in college too. College was wonderful.
Playing around.
Yeah. Huh?
Just playing around.
Just playing.
What's going on?
Yeah,
Okay.
be there. Colleges, they'd be like, why is this lady still here with all this gray hair? So yeah.
Not gray hair.
Yeah.
Okay. We're coming to the end of the show. So for parents who feel overwhelmed or unprepared, what's one actionable step that they can take right now, today, to start planning for college costs?
One actionable step, go to choose a prospective college or university. There may be a college that a student has in mind. Choose it and then go to the college website and go to its net price calculator. Find its net price calculator. You can go to your favorite search engine and enter the name of the university and net price calculator and follow that and use the net price calculator to estimate the cost of sending your kid to college. And that is one actionable step a parent can make to just get started.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Where can listeners find more information about Scholar Ready and access your toolkit, your worksheets, and all the other resources that you have?
Okay, great. So go to www.scholarready.com and go to contact us. And from there, I will send you that information. I will send families that information.
Well, fantastic. Thank you, Jennifer, for joining us today. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Janice. Thank you so much.
All right. And a big shout out to all of you tuning in and engaging with us here at Back Talk by Successful Black Parenting Magazine, the syndicated podcast that's a must for Black parents everywhere. And be sure you follow us on social media. We need you there. Click on everything, follows, likes, ads. But most importantly, I want to remind you all to go to our website, which is right below, and register right now for our National Black Parenting Conference online. It's next week. Go register. The more you engage, the more we all can thrive. So until next time, I wish you all the best and much success. So take care, and thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to Back Talk by Successful Black Parenting Magazine. We'll see you soon.